Hi, I'm Richard Bradshaw, English as you can hear, a retired pastor, occasional visitor to your country, which I love and admire in many ways. Do you like the shirt? Bought in Jackson, Mississippi. Made in Kenya, but hey. You've got an election coming up, in which the two main candidates are an old man who wants to make you great again, and a younger woman who thinks you already are. Now, in one way this is none of our damn business as Brits, and in another way it is, because you're not just choosing an American president, but a leader of the free world, and I live there. And also, I live on this planet, because, you know, I can't find any flights to another one. So we need you to help make sure it isn't ruined, that the free world stays free. But never mind the free world, the Earth itself has a stake in this election. There has never been one in my lifetime that could impact so fundamentally on our future as a species. Yes, I am talking about the climate emergency. If you don't think there is one, please go and study the facts and let them speak to you. I'll say straight off, I'm not a professional scientist, but what I am is someone trained in the scrutiny of documents, someone who can evaluate a case, test it against opposing viewpoints. I can distinguish between propaganda and a rational argument. I know who I can trust. I have worked among scientists, especially medics, and I understand how they try to establish an evidence base for good practice. I know that scientists can be cautious and will not tell you things are straightforward and simple when they are massively complicated. Climate science is complicated. And I also realise that whatever policy you choose to pursue in the name of protecting the environment, it is likely to have unwanted consequences, as will the opposite, as will doing nothing. So policymakers are constantly faced with hard choices that it may be difficult to explain to the public. But there are one or two absolute facts that must govern the choices we do make. The scientific community is highly certain that climate change represents a planetary emergency that threatens to spiral beyond our control unless urgent action is taken. While the likelihood of human extinction due to climate change alone may be low in the near term, the risk of civilization collapse or severe disruption is significant if current trends continue. Those last two sentences are not my opinion. They are part of an answer I was given by ChatGPT, which gets information by surveying the literature and summarising its conclusions at least as accurately as any human commentator could. Now, it is possible that in some fantasy alternate reality that ChatGPT has been bought and corrupted by, I don't know, fanatical vegan tree huggers, so nothing it says is true. AI is faking itself. Is that possible? In support of that argument, you might challenge ChatGPT over something else it's told me recently. I was watching a senior advisor to Donald Trump claim on TV back in 2020 that he had proof that the Democrats were plotting to steal the election. Really? I was intrigued by this, so I consulted the Oracle, and I was told the claim that there is a well-documented report showing how Democrats planned to steal the 2020 election is not supported by any credible evidence or widely recognised reports. No report exists that has been validated or accepted by legal authorities, independent experts or courts. So, either the Republican Party was making it up or ChatGPT is. How might we decide which? Well, to test the claim that ChatGPT is ideologically biased or inaccurate, you'd need to run a series of other questions past ChatGPT and see if other discrepancies emerge between what it says and what you know you know. Well, good luck with that one. I have caught it out just the once when it quoted a line from a Steely Dan song from the Gaucho album when I was asking about a track on Katie Lied. A minor error, and it did apologise. AI can correct itself, and it will. But we know that Trump makes things up, such as most recent example, the claim that the crowds who gathered to greet Kamala Harris off an aeroplane didn't exist, but were generated by AI. No one else seriously believes that, and you might say all's fair in love and politics, but it seems to me dangerous and irresponsible to entrust the possible future of civilization to a man so alienated from the world of facts and rational policy making in the face of known threats, and a party that colludes in his denial, pays a lot of money to spread the lies around, to polarise and poison and trivialise a debate that should be one between rational adults. Thousands of other examples could be given of Trump's habit of dismissing facts as fake news. He has recently posted this. The implication being that all those rioters with the MAGA hats and the Trump banners were actually hired by Biden to dress up and pretend they were on the other side. Yet not one of them has come forward to confess this treachery or say how much they were paid to take part. That will be one for someone in the media, wouldn't it? Nice scoop there. I do think that lies ought to be slightly credible, don't you? As a citizen of the free world, can I beg America this time to vote in a president who knows what facts are and why they matter, in this context, for everyone on Earth? The world was making steady, if grudging, progress towards tackling climate change in 2016, when Trump became president. This had been enshrined in the Paris Agreement, to which the USA was a party. Trump very quickly withdrew America from it. I would not be so mean as to suggest that the main reason was to undo as much of what Obama had done on principle or out of spite, although he does seem to assume that all democratic policies are wrong because they are democratic policies. No, two other reasons were given. The first was that the Paris Agreement was unfair to America, and second, that it put jobs at risk in the fossil fuel energy sector. Response to the first: if you don't like the terms of an agreement, you try to renegotiate them. You don't break a promise to the international community when you are trying to convince them how great you are. And as for the second point, well, given that fossil fuels are really much the heart of the problem, then start to work out how to redeploy workers in those fields into other ones, such as renewable energy, which many industrialists are now recognising is the future anyway, and they are investing in it. New technologies have this way of making traditional jobs obsolete. So you retrain. Whatever happened to all those typewriter factories? The worst thing about the decision to leave Paris was its appalling short-termism rooted in denial that there really is a crisis. At least Biden reversed it. Well, since 2016, the evidence of a planet heating up and fast has been too strong for anyone to deny, or so you would think. But you would be reckoning without that cesspit of climate disinformation, the Heritage Foundation, which, as we all know, is responsible for Project 2025. What are we to make of sentences like these? I am quoting directly from the report. Environmental extremism is decidedly anti-human. Stewardship and conservation are supplanted by population control and economic regression. Environmental ideologues would ban the fuels that run almost all of the world's cars, planes, factories, farms and electricity grids. Abandoning confidence in human resilience and creativity in responding to the challenges of the future would raise impediments to the most meaningful human activities. They would stand human affairs on their head regarding human activity itself as fundamentally a threat to be sacrificed to the god of nature. And the word human was used too many times in that passage. And it was manifestly not written by anyone who was bothered to study what environmentalists actually say, and for whom, if you want to disregard a position, you simply label it extremist. Insofar as it is making any sort of a statement, well, it's just wrong, but it barely runs to that. It's little more than a howl of bigoted outrage against anyone who dares to suggest that the way we treat the natural world matters and has consequences for our way of life, perhaps for our future survival. I have yet to meet any environmentalist, and I meet a lot, I regard myself as one, who wants to abandon confidence in human resilience and creativity in responding to the challenges of the future. Quite the contrary, we depend absolutely on those qualities as we face the very crisis that the writer of this passage wants us to ignore. In its wild generalisations, in its attribution to people it doesn't care for, views which they don't hold, it's unilluminating and completely worthless. To me, it's quite extraordinary that this supposedly major document, a blueprint for a Trump second term, God forbid, is so sloppily written. The style is that of an editorial in some right-wing tabloid newspaper dashed off to meet a deadline, as though it's not expecting to be scrutinised by people who know what a properly written report looks like, who expect allegations to be referenced, examples given, and terms properly defined. It talks disparagingly about elites, like there is something despicable about having the great expertise it requires to belong to one. Dear America, your world-class universities exist in order to equip your smartest students with the credentials to join elites. I went to a world-class university myself, Cambridge, and I have been lectured by members of the intellectual elite. How dare anyone despise them? It'll be like mocking top athletes. God, aren't they up themselves? Just because they're super fit, they win medals and break records. So bloody what? That kind of attitude. And the trouble with elites, with experts, is that they know their stuff, and their evidence-based stuff might contradict what you need to believe. But note that Project 25 takes a position on climate change despite there being not one climate scientist among its many contributors. It has no idea what it's talking about because it doesn't have the expertise to draw on and is so arrogant it doesn't think it needs any. The Heritage Foundation and its partners have a long, dishonourable history of spreading false information about the climate crisis. It's still doing so. It's now trying to drag this issue into the culture wars so that by identifying myself as in favour of tackling global warming, I reveal myself to be woke or communist or some such nonsense. The truth is shocking, undeniable by anyone who dares to study the facts properly, and they call for world-class leadership, which Trump is not capable of offering because he is captive to the lies peddled by the Heritage Foundation and its sinister partners. Give him his head and he will send us backwards, just as he tried to do last time, only now the situation is far more urgent and we don't know how close we are to a tipping point after which there may be nothing we can do. The free world cannot afford to have as its leader the leader of the world's richest nation, someone as delusional as Trump. Do I believe in concerted, internationally agreed action to save the planet? You bet I do. And if that makes me woke, well then it's wokeness that will save us. What I want is to know the facts, I want to know how to act on them, and I want to listen to the scientists, the men and women who really know what they're talking about, not to politicians and rabble-rousing, power-hungry ideologues who have an oppressive agenda to pursue, regardless of reality. Climate science is, to use Al Gore's phrase, the inconvenient truth. It threatens our lifestyle, but it won't be going away, and the threat will grow if we ignore it. The Heritage Foundation is less of a think tank, more of a septic tank, because it's funded by billionaire fanatics and oil companies who stand to lose a lot if demand for their product is curtailed. It won't last forever, we all realise that, but while it does, it spells big money, and big money people want their good times to carry on rolling for now, no matter what the long-term consequences or even the short-term ones. Politicians want to gain power, they need your votes to enable that, and the more unscrupulous of them will say anything to get your support, but the guiding principle has to be, when there is a controversy that can be settled by the science, trust the science. Does Trump even slightly get that? Well, on my own principle, I would have to ask, please show me some evidence that Trump has looked at the overwhelming consensus among climate scientists that we have an emergency and a narrow window in which to act on it, or we are stuffed, and could give reasons why they're wrong, why it is some kind of hoax. Then we could look at Trump's reasoning, test his evidence, and, if necessary, concede the argument. I'm kidding you because you know that Donald Trump is not capable of that kind of rational process. Maybe 20 years ago he was, but it's a 78-year-old and cognitively impaired man that is running for president now. He struggles to complete a sentence these days, have you noticed? He said in a recent speech that maybe sea levels will rise by 1/8 of an inch over the next few hundred years. Now try looking at some actual reports on this and you will find them talking rises of anything from several inches to a couple of feet in decades, and even the lowest of those figures spells trouble.
Miami is one of the first US cities already experiencing the effects of climate change, and it's only going to get worse. 60% of Miami-Dade County is less than 2 meters above sea level, and unabated climate change until 2100 could result in a 4.3 to 9.9 meter sea level rise. South Florida is mostly at sea level. About 2.4 million people live less than 1.2 meters above the sea. That's like if all the residents of Wyoming, Vermont, and New Hampshire were at risk. Miami isn't the only city facing an Atlantis-like future. Here in the US, New Orleans is also under serious threat.
Anyone who now trusts Trump rather than the science has stopped caring about facts, which we know many in the MAGA cult have, or they would know that Biden won in 2020. But America needs someone who does care, who knows that science is objective, not red or blue, not ideologically biddable. And Kamala Harris is such a person. How do I know that? Because if she didn't care about evidence and facts and logical argument, she would have got nowhere in her profession.
He intends to surrender our fight against the climate crisis. And Arizona, every day you feel the impact of extreme heat and drought. You know this crisis is real. He calls it a hoax.
Her training and background in law predispose her to rationality, and that matters in a president. The world needs a US president who can at least assemble and follow a logical argument. That doesn't really seem a lot to ask. Now, Project 2025 may be a poisonous piece of work for a host of other reasons, which for me to comment on could be construed as election interference. If you want to vote to dismantle your democracy, if you want to ban abortion across the whole country, it's not for an outsider to say that you shouldn't. But I do think that as someone who lives on this planet and has nowhere else to go, I have the right to protest when I see America sliding towards the election of a man who would put not just his country's but the whole planet's future in jeopardy. Remember, it's not just me saying that. It's ChatGPT and the overwhelming majority of scientific experts who can show you that the window of opportunity for acting against global overheating is getting narrower by the year. So the world needs a president who gets that, and the choice is or should be a no-brainer. Kamala, I believe the force is with you and that the world needs you. Please win for our sakes. I am the Reverend Richard Bradshaw, and God approves of this message.